think you have to be really intentional when you're dealing with mental health issues, because there's a lot of difficult situations kids are dealing with today than what I did back when I was their age.
I think what we're seeing since the pandemic is an increase in visibility of that struggle and an increase of awareness, even from the individual standpoints. Mental health is a performance issue. Your mental health impacts your ability to show up to work. And for student athletes, their work is their sport.
Picture this. You wake up early for morning lifts. You later have to eat and hurry to your first class. After class is ending around 3 p.m., you have to head back to the athletic center to prepare for practice and meetings. On top of this, you have to repeat the cycle the next day.
Like, our bodies for athletes, specifically student athletes in college, are like commodities.
Student athletes train for years, sacrificing their social lives in order to focus on academics and their success on the field. Over time, they tend to feel overwhelmed due to the pressure of making mistakes, meeting the coach's expectations, and academic stressors.
And that's what they told us too. You gotta hoop, or you gotta play whatever respective sport you play to get to college, to get out of St. Louis. Like, that was everybody's goal.
Kids' worth, a lot of times, they feel like their self-worth starts to be identified by likes and their relevance on social media, how their recruiting's going. Because I think a lot of times our industry has created that.
Increased pressure on student athletes, along with battling issues in their personal lives and injuries, can lead to the risk of depression or anxiety.
If you try to ignore anything that's going on in your life personally from a mental health standpoint, at some point, it's going to start to impede your performance. It might manifest itself through your mood, that you notice, like, hey, I feel dysregulated. Hey, I've been frustrated or tense because of this event. I'm going through a breakup. My family's struggling financially. I'm failing my classes.
So I remember what my coach, Rich Gray, he passed, but he is a coach. He has a long history in the St. Louis Eagles basketball program. But I remember he used to tell us, if you don't love it, don't do it, because you're wasting your time, you're wasting other people's time, and you're going to start to resent yourself, and that goes into your mental health, and you're going to start resenting the sport that you love.
Athletes that invest all their time into one sport tend to think that this is the only career path. But when it comes to an end, they're left with the question, what now?
I think a lot of us, when we do sports, like, it's all we live for.
Raven Ferguson is a former basketball player at Washington University.
Basketball was like who I was for a really long time, from like the age I was 10 to like sophomore year of college. The summer going into my senior year of high school, it was April. I tore my ACL, MCL, meniscus all at once. And that was right before we started traveling for the summer. It tore me apart because, again, basketball was kind of my identity. Having that experience really had me, for those 5-6 months, question, like, who do I want to be outside of this? Like, when the ball stops bouncing, when I stop hooping, because eventually it's going to have to stop, like, who do I want to be for not only the community, but who do I want to be just every day when I wake up?
When you involve sports and business and you intertwine the two mediums, somebody gets worked over in the end, and ultimately it ends up being the athletes a lot of times.
David Knox is a former football player from Lindenwood University. After he graduated, he received an offer to play in the Indoor Football League. During training camp, he suffered an ankle injury and he was released by the team due to not being fully recovered.
For me, it was really hard initially taking that blow because I had to mature myself in a way of thinking like, this was a dream. I got to do a lot of things, see a lot of things, meet a lot of people, do a lot of things. I'm grateful for it. Now I want to transition to something new.
Athletes are starting to recognize that they're more than just athletes themselves.
Athletes that neglect other roles tend to experience a higher degree of emotional adjustment difficulties and may affect their overall self-concept.
It's great when people identify as an athlete as part of who they are, but it's really important that every athlete identifies as being other things as well. It's a misconception that sport is the way out or it's a person's best opportunity to get a college scholarship. The truth is the best way to get a college scholarship is grades. You know, there's a lot more academic scholarships than there are athletic. And the consequence of that myth is that there are a lot of people in high school who are putting a huge amount of pressure on themselves, or whose families are putting a lot of pressure on them, or whose schools are putting a lot of pressure on them to excel in athletics. And so if that doesn't happen, there is a huge questioning of, well, if this is what I was supposed to do and I've not done it, then who am I really?
For other guys, it's business, cooking, traveling, artistry, whatever they want to get into, but ultimately you got to find something else.
I always say I am very multifaceted, and that's just kind of everybody. That's what I learned kind of on this journey, is that nobody's just like one thing, or nobody exists in one specific space.
Not only do they deal with the struggles of being a full-time student athlete, but some struggle maintaining a normal social life. Survey says they spend from 30 to 40 hours each week on training and competing, and 38.5 to 40 hours a week on schoolwork.
But the injury didn't really bother me as much in college. What bothered me was I wanted to be a student. Like, I had spent 80% of my middle school, high school career missing out. It wasn't even the parties. It was just like time, memories, moments that you're supposed to spend with your friends, and being a child, like, I didn't feel anymore.
During Ferguson's time as a student athlete at Washington University, she realized that she wanted to expand outside of basketball and become a normal student. She took an interest in acting, performing at the university during her sophomore year.
And I was the youngest person in the cast, and again, first show, like, I was out of my league. But it was an amazing show, it was an amazing cast, and people came to see it and they were like, this was amazing, and the impact I had, like being able to tell stories in a different medium and people actually hearing it and seeing themselves in the characters, and I fell in love with it. That was a moment where I was like, I think I'm done. There were just so many parts of myself that I had started to find in college, and using college for what it's meant for, to find yourself.
What gets hard for people is not knowing what to transition into. For me, it became martial arts.
There are resources who help guide them in the right direction on what they want to do after school and find a different personality outside of being an athlete. The list can range from therapists, friends outside of sports, and teammates.
You might find that your mental health, your well-being benefits from having friends who aren't student athletes. That it's just a nice break in your day to be around people who aren't talking about the same thing, who don't know your coach, who don't have the same stressors as you. It's another opportunity to connect with people that have interests that you have. Like, how can I connect with other subgroups, other people who are going to stimulate me in that way? And then ultimately, it's going to benefit their well-being and their performance in their social life, and hopefully in their academic life and in their performance.
They can find support from their families.
When we started visiting colleges, my mom would be like, are you sure you want to do this? Like, and I'm like, and I would take it as a joke. I'm like, yes, I want to do this. Like, we talk about this all the time. Yes, I want to do it. But I think when I told my ACL, that was the first time I really had to sit and answer her question, because I was like, do I really want to do this? And my parents grounded me, because they were like, do what you want to do. And they were never people that were like, this is what I want you to do, or this is who I want you to be. It's just whoever you decide to be, you need to be the best version of yourself when you're doing it.
And even coaches.
It starts with us, as coaches. I think three-dimensional coaching, it kind of encompasses that relational part of it, where we get to know each of our players personally.
In all of those cases, it's about helping coaches be the best coaches they can, so that they're getting the most out of their players from a performance standpoint, but really more importantly, so that they're creating an environment that allows their athletes to thrive and allows them to really thrive.
Their coaches dictate what it feels like to show up in the locker room every day, to show up on the court, on the field, whatever it is.
Coming up for air and knowing who you are and standing on it, because a lot of people will try to label you.
At some point you transition to life outside of sport, and so I think that it's important to nudge student athletes to do that work more proactively than reactively.
And the more a person can see themselves as multiple facets, having multiple identities, the less they're putting themselves at risk for some of the mental health concerns that can come when their career ends.
Like, it's nice to be able to come up for air afterwards, but being able to take time and be like, okay, I'm playing basketball. However, it's a part of who I am, not all of who I am.